It basically has a weird visibility issue just because there's one face right on top of the other. As soon as you click one or the other, it'll show the one you've clicked. But that's why when you don't have either clicked and you look around, it's kind of a weird view. Let's deal with that. We can isolate select this thing, like I was mentioning earlier, and go to the face and select these, Control Shift select those little corners here, which are probably going to be proved to be an issue. We can deal with those in a second. Control Shift select anything that we don't need, hit 4 to make sure we only have that top selection selected, and go to extrude and keep faces together, and let's just pull this down and see what we get so far. We go back to shaded mode so we can see. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to undo that and maybe just scale these in a little bit so they're not right at the edge, and then redo that and make sure keep faces together is on, and now drag it in. So now that we have this a little bit of a border there. Let me make sure I didn't undo not far enough back, it looks like. Oh, this is the issue because these aren't following along here. So let's just drag it down for time's sake because we have we already have the top area modeled. When we unisolate select that, we can see we're good there. We can just drag this one back up and actually just vertex snap it. So let's go to the front view. Oops. Actually, I lost my selection there, so I'm going to go back to select that. Go to the front view, and we can hit W, or sorry, we can hit 4 to get the sideways view and just drag that back up to be even. Go back to perspective mode, right click to go to object mode, hit 5, and now we can see we have a deeper hole here, but yeah, let's go to isolate and select that. And oh, the main issue is it's extruding through itself, so we're seeing the back side of the faces. So we can just delete this face, and there we go, and that solved the problem. And we can just drag this one down as far as we want and unisolate select that. We can see this issue here with the internal piece, so we can resolve this, you know, if we want to. It depends on how much you're going to see this stuff. You basically don't want to spend a ton of time modeling things you're never going to see, is a big rule with modeling, because if you work for a studio or something and you spend all your time modeling something no one's ever going to see, your supervisor's not going to be too happy. So it's all about what the viewer's going to see from the camera angle, and if you're working on a show or a movie, they are going to tell you exactly what to model, hopefully. Sometimes that changes and you have to adapt to that. But so now we have this front element, and let's kind of call this good. Maybe pull this edge back a little bit, is slightly annoying. I just shift select that, hit 4 to make sure I have nothing else selected. Just drag that back a little bit, hit 5. Cool, we don't see that. Go to object mode. And so now I want to take this element and let's see what we get if we just bevel this whole thing. I think we're going to have to select edges, but just for time's sake, yeah. I mean, it's pretty close. We're adding a lot of geometry to this thing unnecessarily. So I'm going to go back out and get a little more specific with the exact edges I'd like to bevel. If we look at the reference, it's kind of all of these outside angles are beveled. So I'm just going to grab those, and of course the top edges here, and let's see, we could do the bottom edges as well. And I'm choosing not to merge these. You could spend more time on this and merge these so they're not separate pieces, but for time's sake, trying to keep this tutorial shorter and not keep going on and on, I'm just choosing to do what I think's fastest for us, and you're still learning a little bit. So cool, now we're almost have all of our selections made. We just need to go down this edge, this edge, this edge, this edge, and this one, Accidentally selected that one. And that one. I'll grab that. Cool. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and grab that one. I'm going to go ahead and do those. I think, you know, it should be flush with it, but it's a much more pain in the butt to try to bevel things after the fact, because the number of lines, like where they meet, won't line up, and it just creates a lot more work. So I'm just going through, tumbling around this thing, making sure we have all of the angles. I'm going to maybe grab this one too. All the angles covered here. Now let's bevel this. So let's go to the poly bevel. We can also hit T to pull up the options here. And let's just add one segment and call that good. And you can see the issue when we beveled this. Of course, now it's not flush. We can resolve that in a couple different ways. We can just pull out this edge. And because it's on both sides, probably going to scale it. That's a little bit of a sloppy way to do it, but you know, it gets the job done for speed's sake instead of having to merge this stuff. What you could do is go in and add a lot of extra edge loops here. So we could add one here, and then we could delete faces and then merge vertices where these points meet. That's how I would merge all of those together. But then, you know, since we beveled these, now we have a lot of edge loops to do. And I think for our purposes of just learning, just beginners, you know, trying to discover what modeling is all about, I don't want us to get in the weeds too much on that stuff. So we have a nicely beveled piece here, and we can just maybe extrude these two faces for this front plate element. So I'll go to extrude, keep faces on, and sorry, I want the offset to try to bring it in just a little bit. And then let's hit G again and keep faces on. Just drag this out a little bit. It looks like that should be way closer to the edges. So I think we went too far on the offset. Let's go offset, like point. You know, we can click this thing here, and now when we middle mouse drag, it'll be a lot smaller. So that's probably the best option for us. So then we can hit G again. So now that we've created this little separation of these faces, we can go back and extrude this out and see how far out it comes. Not super far. Seems like a really beveled edge though, like super smooth, more than what we just did. So let's do that. Bevel. Hit T. Or sorry, we need to go to bevel edge first, and now we have it. And we're going to increase the segments here. Now I need to speed this back up because it wasn't really working that well because it was going so slow. So now we have this element modeled. I think what I'd like to see though, hit T again. I think that fractions maybe is too much, or we need more segments. It was kind of too faceted. You could see the edges a little too much. Cool. So that's done. And we can extrude this center face, and it looks like it kind of slopes into it maybe from the top. I don't know. It depends on how you view this image or what the reference you find and use, but I'm just going to do the same thing we just did. Extrude, keep faces on, dial this down so we can get a little more specific on the offset. Middle mouse drag here in the center to get the offset. In the ballpark, it's pretty small. It looks like it's kind of thinner, so I'm going to scale it in this direction. But that it's still in the center, I need to drag it up a little bit. So I'm going to pull this out just a touch because that looks like what's happening in the reference. So it makes our bevel a little wonky because it's trying to get flat at the top here. And we can just delete those top edges so that it's more gradual. So I might do that. Go to edge, select these, double click it. It should go all the way around. It does. Right click, go to delete edge. So now it's more of a gradual. If you look at this profile, it's going in there a little better. So now we have this plate. Extrude this again. So let's go to extrude. Pull this out. Extrude, hit G. Oh, we need to keep faces together though. Extrude that again by hitting G. Keep faces together. Increase the offset here. It looks like, right? Yeah. Let's maybe go back here. Hit G again. Extrude again. Keep faces together. Just smash that down into this thing. I don't know how far, it's hard to see from this angle how far that thing goes down. Just go somewhere like that. And then we can just bevel these edges and kind of call it a day on this stuff. And in the next lesson, I want to show you a very interesting way to model a chord, something that kind of has like an organic shape to it. And even though we're doing hard surface stuff, a lot of hard surface things like mech type things have chords associated with them. So we want to make sure that we know how to do that if you're interested in the hard surface kind of arena. So I'm just going to increase the segments there, go to object mode so I can kind of see it in shaded. And it looks like we just have like a normals issue here. It doesn't know which way to pull. The other thing we can do is add some more geometry here with the multi-cut tool, and hopefully that will alleviate some of the normals problems. Because as I mentioned earlier, Maya doesn't really like triangles, and we just created a couple there. But if we put that down, we're going to make another one. So I might just leave that as it is. Just do these two. Cool. So I think, you know, if we go back through and do what we did in a previous lesson to resolve the normals issues with mesh display, we can just do that super quick. Set to face. So that actually looks pretty good just by going with the averaging the faces. If you wanted to get more specific with that, you can do that. But it's really just for our purposes in viewport. When you create renders of this, those normal faces won't matter as much. But we got this done, and I'm going to quickly create the doors super quick. So I'm going to drag this up, and I'm going to vertex snap this to one side, and then vertex snap this to the edge. And I held D and V to change the pivot, of course, and then I held V just to transform it to the side here, so that it will all scale from this point. And again, I can use the vertex snapping here, or I can just kind of eyeball it, because there, you know, anything mechanical is going to have a gap there, so it can not exactly rub up against things. The one thing we want to make sure is that these in the center are in fact in the center. So let's go to the right view and hit 4. And now we can see the center line. If we hold down X, we can snap to the grid. So now we know that's right in the center. And we can actually just pull that back just a touch. So again, there's a little bit of a gap there. And let's right click object mode and hit 5 to go back into shaded. Scale this down so the door is more of a door size, and bring it up to the top of this edge here. So that looks pretty good. The last thing we need to do is, of course, bevel this thing just a touch. So I'm actually just going to leave it on object mode and go to our custom shelf, click bevel. And I'm going to go pretty small on the bevel and bring back the fraction. So it's just barely beveled, just so it's not a very hard edge there. And then what I'm going to do is duplicate this by hitting Command D. And what I can do, there's a couple different ways you can do this. You could scale it negative in this direction. So we go -1. So it flips it around, and then we can hold down V and snap it to this other side. So it should, I think we're snapping to the wrong thing. It's snapping to the bevel one of the bevels instead of the edge there. So let's go to the right view, hit 4, and just snap that to the inside. So now we can see in the center here, they're equally far apart from the middle. We might need to adjust that a touch. Let's look at this. Yeah, let's just bring those in just a little bit. So we can click both of those and hit R, and then just scale from here. Since it's just a small amount, that's not going to really hurt the bevels that we did. Just kind of close that gap just a touch. Cool. So now we have our Ghostbusters trap, pretty much. We can add these little rivets that we put up here if we'd like. We can add this back element. You basically at this point have all the knowledge you need to model this back area. And then in the last lesson here, it's going to be very short. We're just going to make this a cord that can come off of the back of this thing. So I will show you how to do that in the next lesson. Thanks for watching.